anything that we do with AI has to be additive. Well, you're always the hero in your own story. You're never the villain. And so there was a chance that other people would see this differently. So we needed to be absolutely transparent about the fact that if we were presenting his words, that we hadn't manipulated them. A lot of the things that are being done are perfectly legitimate, and I think that you've got to be so considerate about how you bring your AI proposition to market.
Hello, I'm Pete, and welcome to another episode of Generating, the podcast where we explore AI and the impact it's having on humans and the way we interact and work, and increasingly create. And so I'm joined today by Ben Field, the co-founder and CEO of Deep Fusion Films. Ben, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's very lovely.
This is lovely. I'm glad you like the record player.
I do
as well.
like the record player in particular.
Nice features.
Yes, it's very good.
It's all my personal collection there.
Yes.
4 or 5 records in it. So
What is it? Arcadia? Good. Okay. Yeah.
It's a great collection.
Okay.
Nice. So tell us about yourself and your journey to Deep Fusion.
I mean, it's somewhat accidental and slightly bumbly. I am, by trade, as it were, a very regular TV producer. And I was producing a documentary about Gerry Anderson. I don't know if you remember Gerry Anderson, Thunderbirds, Puppets, Marionation, Super Marionation.
Yep.
And so it was a documentary all about his life. And Jamie Anderson, one of his sons, gave me about 36 hours of unheard audio archive of Gerry talking to his biographer. And we said, this would be the really strong basis for a documentary. And so we put it to Craig Morris at ITV and said, hey, here's this. Wouldn't this be great? And he went, yeah, it'd be great. He said, what archive's going to go with that? How are you covering that? Because, we're making television, not radio. I was like, thanks, Craig. That's a good point. So I'm not entirely sure. And it turns out that Jamie didn't have enough personal archive that was going to cover it. So let's imagine that this conversation happened on the Friday. And on the Monday, and this is back in 2021, pre-ChatGPT, if you can imagine such a time. And so, let's imagine this conversation took place on the Friday. And then on the Monday, the deepfake Tom Cruise thing came out on TikTok. And I rang Jamie and I said, hey, Jamie, how do you fancy resurrecting your dead dad? And that is pretty much verbatim of what I did say, because, it's going to be an awkward conversation, so you may as well break it up by being awkward. And he leant into it. He went, yeah, actually, if Dad were around, he would absolutely be using this kind of tech. So it seems only right that we plow ahead. And so, we genuinely had no idea how to make a deepfake, not a clue. I had been responsible for producing a segment for Children in Need back in 2012, where we had holograms of Morecambe and Wise dancing with Chris Moyles. And so I had experience of this kind of thing before, but not this workflow that was ever going to work with, we're talking a 10-year gap in technology, so no real idea what I was doing. But I rang my friend Christian, who I worked with on Morecambe and Wise, and said, have you got any ideas? And it took us 6 months to get a working deepfake. But one of the things that we realized very quickly was that the audio quality, and I promise you all of this is relevant because it paves the way for everything that came after. So one of the things we discovered was that the audio quality was pretty ropey because it was, it's a dictaphone on a cassette recorder. And so we listened to it and I wonder if we can recreate these. So we had a conversation with Respeecher, who was the only only team at the time who were capable of creating synthetic voices. And they quoted us a number, and the number was high, but, it was kind of, if we really thought about it, we probably could have made it work. In the grand scheme of things, it's obviously not high, but for our budget, it was high. And so we thought about it, and we were about to press go on it, and we sort of stopped, and I said, look, there's a real risk here that somebody could look at what we're doing and claim that we've manipulated the story. Because, I mean, Jerry was very, very good at lots and lots of things. He was an incredible pioneer, but I think one of the things that he was absolutely best at was falling out with people. Whether that is, professional or professional or personal. He just excelled at winding people up. Lovely, lovely guy, but just, had that ability.
Yeah.
And so what we worried about was the fact that, if you're explaining something in your own words, which is obviously as we were presenting the doc, this is Jerry's doc in his own words, well, you're always the hero in your own story. Yeah. You're never the villain. And so there was a chance that other people would see this differently. So we needed to be absolutely transparent about the fact that if we were presenting his words, that we hadn't manipulated them. We'd edited them for context, for the documentary, but we hadn't manipulated the words he said. We hadn't remade him say anything. Because as soon as you say, or we thought at the time, as soon as anybody hears that we'd made elements of the audio with AI and it was co-produced by his son, you'd kind of go, are they just manipulating the truth?
Yeah.
So we wrote ourselves an ethical framework for how we would work with AI. And so, and that had lots of provisions about transparency. So, the top of the doc, it has, I think, 3 to 5 slides, basically explaining how the AI was integrated into the doc. And when it came out, the response to it was incredibly positive, overwhelmingly positive. I had Instagram messages from all sorts of, respected TV producers and filmmakers, which was, like a real moment of, oh God, what have I done? Because I mean, up until then, getting a reply from my own father was was enough of a moment. So, oh, well done, you've done something. Yes, so getting that kind of response was really interesting, especially given that when we announced that the doc was being made, using deepfake, Twitter, which of course is the place to go to for reasoned, nuanced debate, and not just angry shouting. You
Absolutely.
understand?
Yep.
They were not a fan of the idea of using a deepfake in a documentary. But then actually the conversation flipped completely, and the reviews were, best use of a deepfake ever. And so the film came out in April 2022, and then what felt like minutes later, the SAG-AFTRA strike happened, the writer's strike happened about AI in the US. And news outlets then all went, right, who's used AI successfully? So they all sort of descended at the same time on, there probably were a couple of us at the time, but it felt like the descension was on myself. Yeah. And so I ended up on BBC News and all the other news outlets for, what felt like 3 weeks. And part of that, I was talking about what I thought an ethical framework was and the fact that we'd written one. And it became quite clear that nobody else really had one. So a number of the, unions, so PACT and Equity, kind of got in touch and said, look, do you mind writing our policy with us? There needs to be an AI policy. And this was kind of through 2023. And then I started writing policy for people, and including advising the government on, what legislation ought to be around copyright protections and digital likeness and so on. So things that we talk about commonly now weren't common things at the time. And so it was all very new, and it all felt very kind of, why on earth are you listening to me? And of course, informed conversations is the fact that, if I'm involved in these conversations, other opinions come in. And so I was growing, and I didn't realize at the time, a fairly well-rounded or balanced opinion on what AI use in media was doing. So Jamie and I set up Deep Fusion Films together to take advantage really of the fact that, if AI was going to be used in production, then I was absolutely damn sure that it was going to be used ethically and responsibly, because, it's such a major shift for the creative economy that we could have shafted ourselves royally by just trampling all over rights and putting people out of work. And so I took it, not completely, without realizing that there might be a business opportunity. There is some commercial mindedness happening, but there was also a genuine side to that of going, look, I just want to make sure if I'm in this position right now, I have a chance to shape how we're going to use AI, and we're going to shape the debate. And whilst I can't, and I shouldn't absolutely take full responsibility for everything that's happened since, but certainly those early conversations have shaped the direction that we've all moved in since. And I feel very proud of that, because a lot of the things we take for granted as things that we talk about today, like consent and rights and copyright and so on, they just weren't things that people were aware of. They just didn't know. Copyright data training and things, weren't things that people knew about, apart from in legal and business affairs. So we brought them out into the open. And so we set up Deep Fusion because obviously if we were having those conversations, people with AI software and tools would then present me tools and go, do you think this is ethical? Do you think this is responsible? Are there things, would you, there was a very big client who I won't name because they won't appreciate the fact that they came to me. But they did. They came to me and said, right, we've just launched this. Will you endorse it? And I went, why on earth are you coming to me asking for an endorsement? But it was a fair thing, and I did. I spoke about it, a lot, because it was moving in the right direction. So after this happened, I went, look, we need to set up Deep Fusion now, because if we've got the tools, the knowledge, and the know-how, and we've got the trust, we can merge. That's not a word, but weirdly is a merge of two other words that I was thinking of. So in some ways it kind of works. So no, I could merge these two areas and we could hopefully come out with a successful business plan. And so we set up Deep Fusion in 2023, at the back end of 2023. I think we set it up a year early, if I'm honest, because I don't think the industry was ready for us. They certainly weren't ready to embrace, because we're now seeing, at the end of 2025, all of that groundwork that we've been putting in for 2 years is starting to pay off, where we're now getting, commissions with some of the big players, and people are finally, learning that they can trust the procedures that we've put in. We're getting sign off with E&O insurance, and lawyers are taking our side rather than the network side, actually. I'm now advising networks and going, no, but you can do that because look, it says so here. And having that position of trust has been really, really interesting.
And it all comes, I guess, from that ethical statement. So much of the opportunity is from that ethical statement.
It's from an absolutely accidental moment of going, hang on, let's just put the brakes on for a second. What's the bigger picture? What's the audience going to say about this? Because as soon as the audience has their say, your brand lives or dies on that. And I think that's true in so many aspects of AI in production at the moment, is that actually a lot of the things that are being done are perfectly legitimate, and they're really great, opportunities for those companies that are using them. But the PR and the marketing and the optics around it are very much secondary for them. And I think that you've got to be so considerate about how you bring your AI proposition to market, whatever that is, if it's an AI software tool or if it's an AI creation. You've just got to be so mindful, because you're bringing the rest of the world with you. And the industry is very scared of AI. People are scared of AI, and not just because of Terminator, because they think that it's going to take their jobs. And so if you present something that looks like it is going to take their job, they won't thank you for it. And so the industry will turn on you for that. So you need to be respectful of human creators and bring everybody with you. So that's how Deep Fusion started. Sorry. That was a long answer for a very, very quick question, wasn't it?
It's an incredible origin story. I think it really is. And the fact that it comes from that ethical statement, I think, is really powerful, and clearly gives you a great perspective on the market, and very well respected in that space. And I think you're right. For audiences, a lot of outside of the creative sector, in the sort of corporate sector, people are being asked to adopt AI. And I think there is that huge challenge that lots of people haven't created that ethical statement. Sometimes they haven't necessarily articulated the strategy and the vision for what they want to. They're just sort of saying, we have to do it without a clear direction of travel. Clearly for you at Deep Fusion, there are specific use cases where AI works really well. Are there any things that you wouldn't use it for, or anything that you found is particularly useful to use AI in different contexts?
Good, a compound question with two opposite positions. Lovely. They're my favourite. Thanks very much. So I think to take the first question, which is, are there any areas where we found that we wouldn't use it? I'm going to answer that. And sort of by answering the opposite, but
No, that's why I asked the question that way.
yeah. But I
Shall we ask
suppose
it again? Shall I ask again? We could do
no.
it again.
I think right. We can work our way through this.
We can pick it up,
We
yeah.
can pick this up, which is that essentially there are definitely things that AI is very, very good at, such as crunching data, and that sounds very broad, and people use data in a very broad context. We talk about data in terms of even creative output. We say AI will reduce films to binary data and be able to extract information from it. But when I say data, I literally do mean data. It's very good at understanding those binary elements and bringing them all together in ways that humans wouldn't be able to do at the same amount of speed. So there is that. But I think the big thing is that anything that we do with AI, we look at it through the lens that it has to be additive. AI has to be able to allow us to do something that we couldn't have done before the advent of AI. And so I think if we look at, I think budgets are really important to this conversation. And I know that when people talk about AI, the first thing they always talk about is efficiencies. But in business generally, if you're looking at making business efficiencies, what you end up talking about is making profit. And I don't think the TV sector is in quite that same. It is to a degree, but I don't think it's in quite the same place because, as we've seen, ad spend is down, commissioning levels are down, opportunity generally for indie productions are down across all sort of genres, if you like. However, digital opportunity is up, so you can make money in digital, but digital has the problem with the model around digital is the fact that you have to have pre-existing content, or you have to make productions in the most cost-effective manner that you can. There is absolutely a reason, and we should absolutely embrace it, that this podcast right now is being filmed, and it's being filmed in a beautiful, beautiful location, but it will be being done so in the most efficient manner possible because, and you can tell me, that making money on digital is not guaranteed. And if you do make it, it could be small, or, I could say something explosive that might go viral and you might make some money on it. I don't intend to say anything massively explosive today. I do apologise for that.
That's okay.
Although, let's not write it off. So that means that you need to find efficiencies when it comes to digital, not because it will make you more profit, but it's because it will enable you to attempt to make some profit in the first place. Mm-hmm. Because this podcast, as an example, will have a financial outlay. You will have spent money on getting this set up, cameras, people, engineers, everything. Work has gone into the questions, and the script has gone beforehand. All of that is time and money. Mm-hmm. That is an investment in the output, because the output isn't a guarantee. So when you put all of that together and you look at, right, okay, actually, does AI bring us an opportunity to bring the traditional broadcast world into the digital world? Because actually there are multiple efficiencies that we can generate by using AI. And that is absolutely something that AI does and does well. And so we do look for how do we create production workflows and efficiencies in production workflow that create new opportunities. So not that we're looking more profit, because I think that is a very, very small window, because networks will wake up very quickly and go, oh, actually, what, you're making 50% profit now instead of the 12.5% that, in that case, well, we don't need to pay you as much. We can actually make twice as much. They will work out, well, we can make twice as much with half as much. Mm-hmm. So they will wake up to that, because of course they are all answerable, and this is a capitalist society, as much as we might hate it or love it. Yep. So that's digital. But then you look at the broadcast model, which is that actually, if commissioning spend is down, what does that do to the ecosystem? What does that do to the sector? Because when we look at the traditional commissioning distribution model, for the last 10, 15 years, indie producers have had to go cap in hand to distributors for an advance on distribution in order to meet the level of spend and budget that actually it takes to make the show, because making programs is expensive, or has traditionally been expensive, because rates are high and so on. You know, we can't say that rates in TV, you know, are not high, because, you know, if I'm paying £750 a day for a cinematographer, well, that is a high rate. You know, you can't get around that. You know, there's no, if I were to walk into a primary school and tell them, oh no, you know, oh god, somebody complained the other day because I had to pay them £600 a day instead of 750, I would be laughed out of the building. Probably not laughed, probably beaten. But, you know, and rightly so. And you know, we have to take our industry in context of wider society, especially now. So when we're looking at the wider economy, and then narrow it back down to TV, we go, right, actually, it should be possible to make programs for less. So what do we do? And that means that distributors are looking at their pipeline. So if there are fewer shows being commissioned, you go, right, so they're not getting the shows into distribution, which means that their business model's out. So we're now in a period where actually that is what has driven distributors to put their hand in their pocket and go, I'll put money up, you know, for that, and I'll recoup it. I'll take the risk. I will split the risk with you. But that means that distributors have money. So do we need the commissioners in the first place? Because the model of commissioning is so tough, because they need to be so risk averse, because they only have a finite amount of spend and so on, that actually we could now go, if we found a way of working, we could go to the distributors and say, actually, for the money that you were making, you know, you were investing on that, we could actually make the entire show for that, and you would own 50% of it. Well, you're de-risking it. And that is only possible because of the AI workflow that we've put in. So those things absolutely are coming forward. Where I would not be using AI is not a replacement for performance and human performance. Time and time again, you know, a piece of software will come out and it will say, look, you know, we don't need actors, we don't need to hire presenters, we don't need to hire voiceover artists or whatever. And fine, direction of travel is that absolutely, you know, the level of performance you would get out of an AI, performance, by the way, for anybody listening, is in inverted commas. You know, that journey, you know, they are getting stronger, they're getting better, they are understanding, you know, software is becoming capable of analysing, you know, the nuance of spoken word and so on. At the moment, it's all very hammy, but you know, it's getting better. But the point is the fact that I don't want to work with an AI actor, because the joy, and I think this is the joy from an audience's perspective, as well as from a producer and director's perspective, the joy is actually growing together and actually coaching the performance out and watching that grow over time. And I think that translates onto screen. There will be, you know, you can absolutely see that call centers will employ AI agents.
Yep.
Because what you're looking for there is spoken word and dialogue, and that what you're after is a specific output. But with performance, I think what you want to enjoy the labour of love that's gone into it, because I think that comes across. And there will be moments, you know, that is a broad stroke, and I'm sure somebody will give me an example where that is not necessary, or you know, or it doesn't have the impact. You know, we see the advertising market is already not employing models; they're generating them, and you go, yeah, but actually, how much performance? There's my explosive moment. How much performance do you get in a catalog model? Catalog models absolutely, for the last 200 years or whatever it's been, have been integral to what you get. You know, what they can perform can be delivered, you know, in a photograph. But then we move into the area where you go, right, but in the 90s everything was manipulated, and we had a kickback about that. and then we agreed that we wouldn't airbrush and we wouldn't do anything. Currently, we're going through a model where you're going, yeah, we can use AI-generated images for this.
Pick who we want, pick all the features that we need.
Absolutely. And we will go through another cycle of that in the next couple of years where we go, actually, we don't want AI-generated. We want real people because you're selling to real people.
Yeah.
But it's not because the visuals themselves are not capable of reaching the audience and being believable by the audience. It won't be because of that, because that can, as we have seen through the 90s and early noughties, that is already possible. But I don't want to do that because it feels disingenuous to the audience, and I think the audience wants to believe that what they are being presented with is storytelling.
Yeah.
But from human to human, the same as has been done since campfires when everybody were cavemen and women.
Absolutely.
To me, that's a line in the sand. I don't want to cross that.
Yeah, and there's a real challenge, I think, with deepfakes. I mean, with the models, I think I've always had a huge objection to having sort of diverse models created. It feels like we're sort of building out. Here's this diverse model that we've used, but actually it was AI generated, and that sort of seems to undermine so many principles.
Yes,
all
it's
in
like,
one
well,
spot.
what's the point of having diversity on screen if they're not, okay. I mean, arguably you can follow a thread line and you'll find a thread why it works, but that's arguably easier for us to opine on as two white men sat in a room.
Very true.
Able-bodied. So yeah, I don't think we're necessarily the right people to comment on it, but I can absolutely see that in a boardroom you would find a through line to say, well, it's still better than not doing it, but that isn't the point of why it's there in the first place.
Yeah, I think there is a real challenge around deep fakes. I'm sort of interesting that you still use the term deep fakes for content that you create.
Very interesting, because will we carry on using deep fakes? Is deepfake a dead technology?
Oh, go on, tell us more.
Well,
so it's not just the negative connotations of deepfake. Then you're sort of seeing a new way of approaching things.
Yes, I mean it won't take the negative connotation away, but deepfakes as an idea that may be dead. So we can talk about the ethical things, but from a practical perspective, deepfakes have genuine problems, which is that when you're looking at them from a practical perspective, the head movement can only move so much. It has to be 30, 35 degrees onto the camera. It needs to be able to see both eyes. It needs to do a facial marker of 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth. And if it doesn't have that 5-point system, then it breaks up and it goes away anyway. Whereas there is tech now that essentially works like markerless motion capture. And it will be pixel perfect, and you can recreate an entire head, including the hair, and you can model it from all sides. So deepfake, as we imagine it right now, where you literally just swap the face and you blend the face with the original, I think that's pretty much dead in the water. There's a new kid in town, and that will be the future.
Okay, so but there's still going to be...
It's more terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so there's still going to be the term deep fake, which represents, faking what a politician has said, which is probably the greatest risk, I think, when you look at deep fake technology, and no matter which technology
and that will... Yes, but what's interesting is, so we've been involved with a number of software providers now, and some of the big names are involved, Microsoft, Google, Adobe, in creating... metadata tagging, if you will, that is hard-coded to the original, to the output, that tells you how that image was created. And it's not perfect at the moment, so there are a number of systems at play at the moment. There's C2PA, there is some digital watermarking. For instance, if you were to generate a photo using OpenAI, go into ChatGPT and make something. Other LLMs are available. And then go to LinkedIn and post that image on LinkedIn. It will put a tag at the top left-hand corner of that image that tells you how it was created. And what we are working towards is a system where that tagging may not be visually apparent, but you can go into the image and you can prove. And one of the major problems that we have is that, and I think the fix is relatively straightforward, is that social media sites, if you upload a piece of material to a social media site, it will strip out all the metadata from it.
Mm-hmm.
So it can't be traced back to anybody. It would be so simple to outlaw that practice that any material that gets uploaded must retain the metadata, because that's one of the major problems. So if we are able to create metadata that is hardwired to the material and refuse metadata stripping, then that data will still be there for everybody to tell, and it will be very, very easy to check what is real and what is not, and it would be solvable quite quickly. There's probably a reason why somebody hasn't done that.
Yep.
It's just that I don't know what it is.
Well, probably so much content is deepfaked or AI generated these days, and some platforms are quite happy for people to go with the narrative. Yeah,
but I mean, I think all of these conversations have to imagine that, there's the thing that people always say, AI is always, today is the worst an AI is ever going to be.
Yep.
So that concept suggests that today is like ground zero. Right. Well, if we're looking at the positives of ground zero, we have to look at the negatives of ground zero as well, which means that, yes, there's a shed load. Nearly did the swearing thing that I said I wouldn't do. There's a shed load of imagery that has gone before now that we kind of have to write off. That's why we want the watermarking and the digital fingerprinting, so that you can see, so that we can create a system that can analyze an image and be able to tell just by looking at it whether it's fake or not. And there's systems in play that kind of do that, to a degree. If they were widely adopted, that would be really helpful. They're not being widely adopted, and I think more has to be done to make that the case. But also, we have to imagine that every day we have is ground zero for AI. So we have to, everything forward facing. If we're saying that a load of images have been created over the last 2 or 3 years, imagine what the next 100 years looks like and how much more material. So, there is a far greater benefit of saying, yes, but from today, we could stop that. And then all the remainder of images, we are able to tell what the data position is. That is a much better position than going, oh, well, we haven't been able to do it before, so, let's not bother. Which I know is not what you're suggesting. But, we have to act proactively, and that is what people are currently doing.
Yeah. So if you were just setting out today, is there anything that you would approach differently, or any new tools that you would use instead of things you spent time with in the past?
I think you have to unfortunately, there are so many different tools out there that it doesn't matter, and the evolution of the technology is moving so quickly that it doesn't matter what you start with today, because by the time you've learned how to use what you're learning today, the knowledge you have gained will help you in whatever it is that comes out tomorrow. So pretty much everything I've learned or trained on or what have you is, as a piece of software, is almost completely irrelevant to what I'm working with today. And every single day feels like that. But the accumulated knowledge of, okay, well, I've learned to use this system in this way, and that helps me adapt to how I might be able to use the next bit of software that comes out. If you were to look at the obvious places that people start are image generation, LLM use, ChatGPT or Gemini or what have you, and so image generation, LLMs, and video creation. Those are the ones that people more often than not think about in terms of what do I need to learn how to use. And everybody, the optics around that, the PR around all of those elements are that, something will come out and it will say, it's the best tool ever. It's this one beats them all. Just use this. Well, that is marketing. And the truth of that is that obviously they are not the best thing at it, but they will be better than some of the others at specific tasks. So, for instance, and this is contentious, but if you were, and I'm not advocating that one does, but if you were to attempt to generate a script, a comedy script, for instance, in an LLM, then in my view, ChatGPT is not the best at that. Gemini is actually quite good at it. If you want to do some vibe coding, so vibe coding, for those of you that don't know, vibe coding is the idea that you can build a piece of software without knowing any programming language, because you can just tell an LLM. That's quite tricky.
Yes, an LLM.
And it's a bit like an enemy. See an enemy, and an LLM. Yeah, so you can tell an LLM the software you want, and it will write the code for you, and then you keep iterating and keep telling it it's got it wrong.
Until you get the right vibe.
Until you get the right vibe. Absolutely right. And I've found that ChatGPT is not particularly great at that. Gemini is not particularly great at that, or the latest version of Gemini. I haven't tested for it, but the previous version, so Gemini 3 might be okay at it. So apologies if it is. But Claude 4.5, really good at it. So, again, if I want something analysed, I'd go to ChatGPT. If I want a script writing, which I wouldn't necessarily do, but if I'm in development and I want to test something, I'll do it with Gemini. And if I want a code writing, I'll go to Claude, but I'll get ChatGPT 5.1 to check it, because that's what it's good at. Same as I discovered that, and I'm not advocating commercial use of any of these, by the way, because you have to check the terms and conditions for each tool you use, but I know that Hailu, I don't know how you actually meant to say it. Hailu, H-A-I.
I'll go with you on this one.
Minimax, anyway. Minimax Hailu 5 or something, I think it is. I think it's that, is really good for construction videos. So if you want a time lapse of something being constructed, it's really good at that. VO3 or 3.1, which is really good for lots of other things, really not good at understanding how buildings are made. So, you kind of have to explore them all in order to then focus in on what you want it to do, because there is no one answer of a good tool and a bad tool.
Very good. And you've baked that sort of thinking throughout the entire workworkflow, right? So it's not just the creative output where you're using AI, it sort of goes across the board from...
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was told in a meeting the other day, because we're still expanding, that I would have to take on the role of Chief Technology Officer for a short period of time whilst we scale up. Now, I have no key skills as a Chief Technology Officer, but yet we are now launching software. So I'm looking at our software output in a similar way that I look to any of our other product offerings, be those programs or what have you, is because actually I need to look at them as products, and it's about usability and it's about audience. So it's we have other members of the team who do a lot of the work for me, but I have to be over all of it, and that's a really interesting new dynamic, which is that I would never have had the skills to be a Chief Technology Officer before. And Chief Technology Officers will tell me that I still don't have the skills for that. But the point is the fact that, it is now something that I can just about keep on to. And that is because we are building workflows now that are, we are creating tools in order to service our creative needs and our creative endeavors. So let's use Virtually Parkinson as an example. So Virtually Parkinson, for those of you who don't know, was the podcast that we launched that explored the relationships between human and AI in a chat show style that used the voice of Sir Michael Parkinson, the late Sir Michael Parkinson.
Parky.
AI Parky, as we like to call him. And in order to do that, realize I'm flashing my ankles. Nice. How very 19th century of me. I need to buy longer trousers, apparently. Yes. Oh, what socks have you gone with?
I've got
today?
Simpsons socks today, actually.
I've just gone with blue.
New purchase. Got my Christmas present early. Got some Simpsons socks.
You can just see them there. I feel dirty. Yes. So we wouldn't have been able to create Virtually Parkinson without writing a piece of software that we called Squawk. Which enabled the brain that we created of AI Parky to converse with our guest. And as soon as we created that, other people said, "Oh, actually, can we do that with that?" I was like, "No, get off, it's ours." But it did start that train of thought of going, actually, it might be that we could strip out elements of what we do and make it commercially available.
So it's actually software then, is it? It's not just agents within some of these other systems?
It's proper software. So we launched our first piece of software last week. I think, called Script Reader. And this isn't a plug. It's more just interesting that it happened. It's part of our offering now. And so Script Reader we built as part of a I don't know. I think it was part of a. It might have been part of Parky actually, where we needed to ingest the script and have it read back to us. So we uploaded a feature script and got it to assign a different voice to each character and read it back to us as an audio drama. And we went, oh, actually, that's a really useful development tool because we can actually play it back at twice speed. So a 90-minute feature script, because, we get sent scripts, frequently. 90-minute feature script, we can now play in 45 minutes. I no longer have to read it. I can be in the car, or I can be on the train. And it productivity generator. I went, okay, well, that's not bringing anything particularly into our business. It's not. There's nothing special about that, so we'll just sell it.
But it's incredible that innovation. It's. I think that's what AI opens up for everybody, isn't it? It's to really explore the things that are, taking you time and applying new thinking and use of AI tools, and ultimately creating a new piece of software that's going to drive benefits to you and potentially others.
Yeah, and that's right. And it's about, I suppose, we like to be really open and really collaborative, and I think other people are slightly scared of that. We bear in mind the TV industry has forever been told that it needs to keep hold of its IP, and the IP is the most valuable thing that it has. But that's under a point where people were prepared to pay. When people are not prepared to pay, and we've had to do co-production deals and collaborations for the last 10 years, we're looking at the ecosystem now and going, do you know what? This is evolving so quickly that we need to learn from each other. And it is so much better to have 50% of something than 100% of nothing. And so with every opportunity that comes up, you go, yeah, okay, fine. I've had this forever. And sometimes it's to my detriment, and I hope at some point it will stop being. But so my training was actually to be an actor. That didn't work. As I discovered very quickly that in order to call yourself an actor, you do have to get work as an actor. So what I was essentially a resting barman. But whilst I was training, my teachers and my lecturers said, "Oh, well, you need to go and learn the lighting desk so that you can jump on the lighting desk whenever you do. Go and do this training course. You can be an actor for a camera course." And I did the camera course a couple of times, and in the end, I went, "Oh, actually, I could probably operate that camera now." And so very quickly, I've just gone, "Well, I just give it a go, see what happens. What's the worst that can happen?" And in fact, I got my first job directing TV in exactly that manner, where somebody said, "Oh, have you directed from a gallery before?" "Oh, yes, I can do that. I can do that." And I rang my mate at the time, Nick, who was making 2 pints of lager and a packet of crisps. And I went, "Nick, I've done something really stupid. I've taken on a job that I don't know how to do." But it's that thing of always just jump in and work it out as you go, and just be honest. And everybody will. Clearly, I wasn't honest when I tried to get that
people who
job.
hired you,
But I needed a job. I think we've all been there. But that openness and transparency, and just going, right, okay, yeah, fine, come and play, come and do it.
Well, with AI, I mean, there are no answers. There's no. Sort of plan in place
no hard and fast
for what
rules.
we're going to do. And so I think that ability to look at the opportunities and see and test things out is important.
Isn't that interesting? Because as you rightly say, there's no one solution. However, and so that becomes really, really difficult then to justify, one's own worth, if you like, which is why we have not positioned ourselves as being the only ones that can do something, but we have positioned ourselves against we are the ones that you can trust to do it right. And whether that's through ethical policy or through, legal frameworks, that if you're working with us, then you are going to be working at the forefront of what is possible and what is possible to do in a legal and responsible way. And that is something that other people can't offer because they haven't put the groundwork in that we have up to. And this is why, we put 2 years in and the first year was unpaid, in order to get to that point where we can be the trustworthy people, because trust is now something that is invaluable, because people don't know what AI is doing and they don't understand it, whereas we do.
Yeah, incredible. And I guess that there's we work a lot in the learning and communications space, right? So lots of people within organizations are struggling. They don't necessarily have the access to multiple AI
100%.
tools. They're sort of locked down into one thing. Do you think there's an opportunity within that to sort of hone the craft still in one particular tool, like Copilot's probably the biggest thing at the minute, because everybody hired Microsoft.
Yes.
But do you use Copilot even? Do you see ways that can benefit people?
I don't find Copilot to be that assistive. I have nothing against Microsoft. I just wish things that they built worked. So,
Yeah.
But that aside,
so keep that in.
Yeah, please do. I'll never be hired by anybody using Microsoft. I mean, every time I try and use Microsoft Teams on my phone, it crashes, and then I have to restart my phone. Anyway. What was the question?
Yeah, it's a good point. I'm not really sure.
No, I mean, so are there tools? If you are locked into one tool, can you still teach yourself AI? Is that the?
Yeah, I think it's probably a good. Yeah. Let's go with that. So if you
hang on, we'll swap.
You've already answered the question in many ways. You sort of said that earlier. So I mean, but where does it lead us? I think that's what I'm trying to get.
I think the thing is that there is a lack of available training that is free at the point of use, which means that for an economy that is already struggling and everybody is tightening their belts and not entirely sure that the last budget is going to have helped many people in the sector particularly. It'll help some on fringes of society, and that is great, and as it should be. But I don't think it necessarily helps us as a point that training is an additional need that we need to pay for ourselves. So I do fully recognise that puts the onus on individuals. However, there are companies that are now coming up with training options. So I mean, we've written one with the National Film and Television School that started in start of October and finishes in March, and that's it's the first of those. We only took on a small cohort for that, 20, 22 people, because we needed to check that
it was going to work.
It worked.
Yeah.
And it does seem to. But, there then needs to be wider provision and wider adoption. We need to... And unfortunately, that is going to come down to, personal responsibility to some degree, as everything else does. But what we've found is that those that are coming through university now, you kind of have to imagine that ChatGPT or AI generally isn't new. There are graduates now who have spent their entire university life using AI, because actually it's been around 3 years, or slightly longer. Which means that you're starting to get people coming out of university who are AI native. So they are already, we've been saying this for a long time, AI will not take your job, but somebody who, uses AI will. And we are now seeing this, because it's not necessarily about being able to arrive and understand the prompt specificity and all the rest of it off the bat, but they've grown up around it. So they kind of go, they can plug into it fairly quickly. So we've hired people who have been, who are probably 21-ish, and they just jump in and go, yeah, okay, no, I can do that. Whereas at the same time, if I'm hiring people who've been in the industry for a while, and I say, we're, obviously they're aware by that point of who we are and what we do, but they say, oh no, I've heard of it, I've not used it. It's a real disadvantage now because I'm more minded to somebody who can pick it up quickly and go with it. So that level of personal responsibility to start teaching yourself is, but there is a lack of provision.
And that the skills that they're bringing in for having used AI before, it's not just getting a good prompt and getting emails out. What are the key skills that you're seeing and are looking for?
It's a knowledge of it's a knowledge that failure within AI is fine because there's no real impact. We set up a framework, of saying, right, these are the confines upon which you cannot act outside. But other than that, go and try stuff, and they'll just try it. Whereas people who've been in the industry a little bit longer are a lot more reticent to just give it a go. We've particularly noticed it if you've ever worked with the. Particularly notice it if you've ever worked with the BBC. BBC employees will look at it and go, "Well, can I do that though?" It's like, "Well, yeah, just try it." Right, but what happens if I do this? Well, no, I've told you it's safe. And yes, but do I need to write it down? No, you just need it. And by the time that you've had a half-hour conversation with somebody, the other person has already done it.
Yeah.
That is not a. That's not an isolated incident. I can point this at a number of occasions where you go, oh, for goodness sake, just get on with it. Yeah. And it's okay to fail. And I don't know whether that's as we get older, generally, we are more fearful of failure. I don't know.
Well, it sounds like more of a sort of organizational culture piece, right?
But isn't that always the way? Actually, and it's even people of my generation, 40s, early 40s. Apparently, I'm no longer 40. Who knew? If you don't engage in it in a way that just look at it as a playground, the world will not end by trying things. Yes, you'll make mistakes, and yes, there'll be things that go wrong, but ultimately, this is a new playground, and there will be rules that you have to bring into commercial production.
Yeah, you can't go up the slide. That's a classic playground rule, right?
No, you can't. No.
But it is a playground. I love the idea of that. I mean, you do need to be able to play quite freely. I think people struggled in the past with the idea of being agile and trying to create agile organizations, but actually failure would cost you your career. So
yes.
You can't fail.
But isn't that interesting, though? You say it costs you your career. How many people do you know at the moment that have a career? We're now just we're a collection of freelancers. Even me as a CEO, right, what is a CEO of your own company if not a slightly glorified freelancer? That now I have additional responsibility and I have staff and I have people that I need to actually make sure can pay their responsibility, can pay their their salaries and things. But actually, right, if the company goes under, what protections do I have? None. Yep. So I am essentially a freelancer because there's still no protections for me. And we're all in the same boat to that degree, which means that that's why we don't care about careers anymore. I find that people coming up now, they don't ever imagine they're going to have what could be defined as a career. There is no safety net, as we've seen with Hollywood producers. I was in LA last year, and I was being driven around by a producer who'd had like a series of successful films, and he's now an Uber driver. Oh. You go, there is no career, no guaranteed career, so just give it a go, make the best of it.
And is there anything else that you've done to build that sort of psychological safety with people to experiment?
No, just trauma.
Just trauma. Yeah. We're all dealing with that.
We're all dealing with trauma. No, I think in terms of trying to, it's just be human, isn't it? I mean, be aware. We always talk about mental health, and we always talk about it as this sort of big floating thing that people don't really have an exact handle on. And you see the things, the memes frequently of you never know what somebody else is going through, and you don't. You never know what somebody else is going through. But the biggest thing that I can do is just try and be a human being, and not force people to do things that they don't want to do. And I try, don't scare anybody. For God's sake, why make life more difficult than it needs to be? We can all go on this journey together, and we can do it safely, and we can do it in a way that brings everybody along with us, and we all go on this journey together. Or we can make brash announcements that, are massive PR opportunities and get your headlines all over the, Deadline or Variety or whatever. But actually, the impact of what you're saying will cause huge amounts of grief and uproar for a load of people. There's a much better way of doing it, of bringing everybody along together and making it a community rather than a series of egos. And that is the thing for me, which is that you go, right, come and, when we're employing people, it's like, right, come and bring your skills and key talents, and we will all go on this journey together. And yes, okay, we are all going to be limited by what we can pay and what we can afford, and but actually the journey should be one that is relatively calm and stress-free, where I can give as much support as possible. And sometimes we'll drop the ball and sometimes we'll miss it, but we just have to be decent people to each other and try and support everybody at the same time. And that's the only thing that I can really do when everybody is scared about AI use. We need to be paying people's wages, we need to be making money, but we also need to be mindful of the impact that we have on the industry as we do it. And that just means don't be a dick about it. Just bring everybody together and try and be a human being.
Nice. I like the point you say about people with different talents. How important do you think it is to come with a talent to use AI rather than just being able to use AI?
That's a really good question. There was an article in Forbes. I always say the other day, but I've been saying the other day for what probably feels like 6 months.
Yep.
So
sure.
Let's imagine there was an
Time
article
flies.
in Forbes this year. It's 2025 currently. So at some point this year, Forbes put an article out that said something along the lines of, has the AI bubble burst? 95% of all AI pilots have failed. And I looked at that and went, well, thank God. Because the reason that 95% of AI pilots, if that percentage is to be believed, have failed, is because AI has been adopted by people who think that it is a fast track to skill and craftsmanship because they can see the visuals. But actually, and I am referring to AI in TV and film production here. Just because you can type some words into a prompt box and it creates a visual does not mean that you are a crafted storyteller. You need the underlying skills and the knowledge of how storytelling works, or how lenses work if what you're doing is you're creating beautiful shots using VO3 or Sora or whatever. You need to understand why lenses do certain things in order to be able to get the best possible outcome. Now, I am very definitely a generalist. I have a sweeping knowledge of everything, but I would never say that I'm a specialist in anything, apparently, apart from now, apparently AI. But I know that if I have a camera operator who understands, cinematography and how to be a DOP, they will get a better looking shot out of, and a video generator than I ever would, because they would be able to put the settings into it to know what to get out of it.
Absolutely. And I think that's the same across multiple industries, right? I think people who have that deep expertise will understand and be able to get the best out of the AI, whatever it's solving for them.
Absolutely.
And ultimately, I think we're all storytellers. You've got to tell somebody about whatever it is you've done at some point. So that ability to tell a good story, some of those human skills do become even more important.
Really important. And that's going to be the interesting thing, actually. So, obviously everybody sees me as being Mr. AI. But there is the other part of my brain which is very active in going, right, I love what AI can bring to this section of my life and deep fusion and so on. But there is another part of my brain that goes, do you know what? What was it? Top Gun Maverick, where their primary level of PR was that everything was done in camera. I love that. I love the fact that I could watch that and know that everything I was watching was generated in camera, and there was somebody with a specific technical skill set that made all that happen. That is beautiful. In the same way as I recognize the skill that goes into doing something that uses AI. And there will be many that argue that AI is just it's scraped data and it's auto-populating and all the rest of it, and there's no skill in using AI. That's rubbish. There is a skill to using AI. There absolutely is. In some instances, there isn't in others. It is just text prompt and off you go. But there absolutely in creating high-quality output using AI, there is a skill, and anything that says beyond that is reductive. But there is absolutely skill in the other as well, of course. And the two fascinate me. And I think that what we will find is that we will get a section of people that lean into AI production, and at the same time you will get an upsurge of those that want to see practical effects, because we're going to have a divide, and audiences are going to enjoy both, but you will get that upskill, you will get those specialisms, and I think both are no less or no more worthy than each other. It's just that AI is still being developed at the moment, so it's not quite there yet, which is why there is a bit of retaliation to it. But you'll end up in this two-party sort of way, and there will be cross sections. They will join. We have forever we have had I say forever, live action has been a standard stream of entertainment in whatever form.
Yep. Then
we had animation. There is a hybrid between animation and live action, which we call CGI. Then there was automated CGI. So we will happily watch animated movies, and we will happily watch live action movies, and we will happily watch live action movies with animation in them. So AI generated movies is an extension of what we've already got.
Yeah.
So it will have its own stream, and it will also fall into all the other categories, and it will become a blended model.
Yeah.
And I think it will universally be adopted and sort of appreciated by audiences, because audiences don't care how things were made. They just care whether it's good or not.
Yeah, definitely. Interestingly, I wonder, it's an interesting question. Well, you'll be the judge.
Yeah, well, I hope it's interesting, because you've set it up as one. So I hope that this is an interesting question.
Well, I wonder, when do you think we'll stop talking about AI and it just becomes part of that workflow, right? We had the internet, we were surfing the net, we were logging on, we're doing all these things for a long time.
I remember.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
there's a special IT crowd moment of, this is the internet. Thank you, Jen.
Well, we also used to Google things, right? And now kids are just talking about, they say search it up in a way that is...
oh, so you're very down with the kids there.
I'm down with it. I'm a 14-year-old. So they brought it to me a lot earlier. But searching things up, so Googling things has gone. So how long will it be, do you think, that it's just another tool? We're not even saying AI, and it's not even a differentiator or a...
I think, yeah. I mean, it will dissipate. It will go into the background. Of course, at the moment it's the bright new shiny thing that everybody's kind of equally interested and scared by. I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon, because I don't think it's reached its potential yet. I don't think it's got any level of universal adoption. I think in 2027, I think we're going to see an awful lot of AI on screen. And to what degree we recognise it and see it, but it will be there, because I can see it being produced at the moment. So that means that 2027, it will still be being talked about in 2027. It will probably start dissipating around 28, 29, but we still talk about CGI now. We don't talk about it on every podcast, but there will be podcasts and panels and things that cover CGI. And also, CGI hasn't really advanced a massive amount. In fact, there are those that say it's actually regressive, that actually CGI in films has got worse over the last decade. But I think that, so AI will follow that marker, but AI also keeps improving. But if we look at the last 4 years, we've probably increased from 10% worthwhile adoption through to 75% worthwhile adoption, and that has been a really steep curve. What I suspect will happen is the increments now will be further apart and less noticeable, and they will be better and better and better, but we just won't notice them as much.
It's interesting. Isn't CGI getting worse because budgets have been cut, and isn't AI just going to make CGI better? Is it, or do you see them as very distinct?
Yeah, probably is
technology.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is the fact that AI systems within CGI workflows will absolutely make them more and more seamless. So yeah, I do agree. But then budgets are not necessarily always getting smaller. I think it was a couple of years ago that, and not that this is a marker for anything particularly, but the winner of the Best Picture at the Academy Awards was $100 million movie. I'd argue that is not a small budget. I don't know what the CGI effects were in that, if any.
Yep.
But the point is the fact that CGI, but budget does not necessarily equate to poor CGI. There can be a myriad of reasons for that, and I'm absolutely certain that if I were to go on to YouTube, I would find people who are able to highlight high budget movies with low rate special effects, and there'll be all sorts of reasons for that.
Yeah.
But the one does not necessarily equate to the other, and I think it would be a mistake to think that.
I think sometimes with less budget, you have to be more creative, and you have to
100%.
find new ways to approach things and do things differently.
Well, I mean, I've said this for a while, that actually we're in the perfect storm at the moment, which is that would AI, if in what other set of circumstances would people pay and continue to pay for crap output, which is basically what AI generation is. So, if I want to create something for, you're almost buying something on the promise that it might be good. I've seen a video on YouTube and it does look like this bit of software might be able to produce me something that's quite good. Actually, I've now spent 60 quid on, VO3 tokens through Vertex, which is Google's enterprise model, and I still haven't actually got what I need. But it's still probably cheaper than me going out and shooting it, with a cameraman and or a camera operator, and doing it in person. But there is no other universe. So if money were no option, I would take a camera operator out and I'd film it.
Yep.
Whereas now I'm going, well, the money isn't available, so I tell you what, I'll spend 60 quid on trying to make the perfect video in VO3. But there is no other model where you would accept poor quality of service and keep paying for it. It's a very, very weird system. But we've all just gone, oh, well, that's just what we do because it's still cheaper. It's the perfect storm. And that wouldn't happen under any other circumstance.
But that links to that sort of lack of fear of failure as well, right? Because it's cheap enough to keep experimenting and seeing.
Absolutely.
And I wonder where in a world, particularly in the corporate setting, people are being asked to do more with less all the time. I guess if you were thinking around that more with less, are there any key tips or tools that you would introduce for people to get a good bang for the buck?
I mean, to be honest, they're all much of a muchness in terms of cost. I think that there are platforms that work as marketplaces for generation tools. They come with their own particular set of challenges. So I think there's whether or not you could use something internally for development versus whether or not you could use any outputs for commercial propositions. That you'll have to look at the terms and conditions and then look at whether or not you actually need to buy an enterprise model for the marketplace. So for instance, there's Free Pick that seems to have an awful lot going for it at the moment. There's a lot of models on Free Pick at the moment, and they seem to have a really good workflow. But I'm not entirely sure what their terms and conditions are around data use and copyright and all the rest of it. But certainly, there are models within that are cheaper to run than others. So Flux is one, and that is cheaper than using VO3. But VO3 arguably is trained on a more consensual model. So VO3 is arguably this is the position that is taken, that when you sign up to Google, you consent, you agree to their terms and conditions, and their terms and conditions say we can use any uploads for our training purposes. So you've agreed, you've consented. You may not have read the terms and conditions, but arguably that's on you. We can talk about informed consent versus consent at a different time. So arguably a lawyer would say, well, VO3 is arguably slightly better or safer than Flux, where you don't have any idea how it was trained. But VO3 will cost 6 times as much. I don't know if it's 6 times,
Yep.
but it will cost substantially more than Flux will on a credit-based system. So you could try with Flux, but the outputs from Flux would be very different from the outputs of VO. So if you then develop with Flux and then go, I'll just use VO instead, we go, actually it behaves in a very different way. So you wouldn't necessarily get the same kind of outputs. It's really difficult to start on something that appears cost effective when you may not be able to commercially use it at the same time. So it's really tricky. But the idea of being of sort of having less and having to be more creative because of it has ever been thus. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard the story of I think it was Blue Planet, where they essentially had to deliver, I think it was, let's say, 12 episodes. And then they discovered they needed to deliver 13, but they'd spent all the money. Right. So what they made is the 13th episode, they made a making of documentary of how they made Blue Planet.
Yeah.
And that making of documentary became more successful than the entire series of Blue Planet. Yeah. And so actually, that perfect storm idea is often very advantageous to a creative with the right mindset.
Yeah, no, I love that. And so thinking about creatives with the right mindset, your team is all based in London, is that right?
No, we're a Welsh company, but we are split all over the place. I mean, as most creatives are, sort of post COVID, it's something that still haunts us all in some way, but actually is really great because that means that we were talking about sort of the diversity gap. It means that we can actually just hire the right people for the company. So yeah, we are spread all over the place, and I think that's a real advantage, both for nations and regions, and it means that we can actually reach out to people and help communities now that might have needed to be London centric before. And so no, I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, very good. And is that international or is it UK?
We have international partners. But we don't have anybody on payroll. We have partners that are international, and those are individual, that we hire in on a freelance basis, but not contracted to the UK.
Very good. And is there anything that you think the UK in particular is doing very well with AI at the moment? Apart from deep fusion, obviously.
Deep fusion's doing brilliantly. No, I think our adoption of AI is slow and methodical, which will have its own advantages in some way. But actually, the landscape for AI adoption in the UK is, not massively positive. It sounds like a very bad thing to say. I mean, Channel 4's guidelines on AI adoption is very good. I mean, I like the way that they've positioned it. Alex, before she headed that up, and that looked really good. Networks are very messy. There aren't any UK-based models. We've just had the lawsuit with Getty versus Stability AI. Where Getty didn't come out with the result they wanted, but it did prove to be useful insofar that it proved that if you use an offshore model in the UK, then the use of the model does not necessarily infringe, regardless of where the data came from upon which it was trained. However, it did point us towards the fact that if the model outputs infringing IP, then that is the responsibility of the developer, not on the user, which is very, very useful. So, our legal system is protecting the right people at the moment without having the ability. It's slightly hamstrung. The copyright laws are not set up for AI. So it isn't able to help creatives at the moment who've had their work trained or used for training. It doesn't seem to be able to be particularly helpful in that respect, but it is able to put the hammer down when you say, no, actually you're infringing on UK IP. It is able to stand up there. But no, AI adoption is, the position is not hugely beneficial in the UK at the moment. AI consultation at the start of the year was not received very well by creatives, because it was just, opt in, opt out, essentially, option 3 or whatever it was. And we haven't seen much movement since then. There's a lot, Baroness Kidrell. Oh, crikey! If you'd have asked me in February, I'd have remembered her name. But there's some work going on in the House of Lords at the moment, which is still, trying to be on the right side of everything. But it's so slow, and it doesn't seem to matter what we do. It just gets stuck in red tape. I've heard on good sources that the results from the AI consultation that happened back in February probably won't be seen to be moving. There won't be any movement on that throughout the course of this Labour government, which is remarkable.
Being able to legislate, the pace of legislation is always going to be behind
it's incredibly
AI.
so. But also that AI consultation, normally when you have a consultation on something, I am told the maximum they have ever had before is 400 responses to a consultation. For the AI consultation bill, they had 11,000. Right. So just in terms of manpower, they don't have the people to go through those consultations in a meaningful way. I did suggest they put it through ChatGPT, but apparently that was not the right thing to suggest.
No, fair enough. I can see that. But I think that sort of level of engagement with that process just shows how deeply concerned everybody is, right? The humans, creatives, or whether you're in a different role in a different job, like completely, there's still that concern.
But being concerned is one thing. But you can remove concern by being educated.
Yep.
And that's the problem, is the fact that we still don't have transparency around, there is not enough education around it. Everybody is still in the dark. I spend so much of every week reading terms and conditions. And that is why I do as many podcasts as I do, or speaking engagements and all the rest of it, is because the information is out there. It's just that it's not in any uniform way. And I know that there are beginning to be provisions for this stuff. But, concern is the enemy of progress. And we can all be concerned, but it's what you do with that concern next. You can whinge about it, you can rant about it. It's not going to change anything. It is up to us as individuals and as a collective society to change something. And that's what we're trying to do, or that's what a number of people are trying to do, is form collectives in order to actually progress the conversation. And the more people that are part of that conversation and are being informed about, how things actually work, not how things, they'd like to work or what have you, be informed about what the facts are. Don't be informed just because, I don't want it to be like that. Well, it is like that.
Yeah.
So let's do something about it.
Yeah, well, the genie's out of the bottle, isn't it? And so it's about getting to grips with that, understanding it, but ultimately seeing those opportunities to look at your own tasks and potentially innovate and build entirely new things and create something.
Absolutely.
Something
there is so much potential for UK companies at the moment because, if I can write software, then anybody can. And I'm only making software that helps me. There is such an opportunity that every single company in the UK has right now to put somebody on this and go, can you make my business better by just playing in the sandpit?
Yeah.
And at some point, something good will come out of it. And you have to trust that process. We've done it for all other areas of sectors, across all areas of industry. But right now, we have an opportunity to be anything because the tools are coming out and all we need to do is play with them and ask the right questions and go, what can we do today? And that's all we need to do.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, that's a really powerful, positive message to lead on. Thank you so much for coming in. I love the fact that everything came from your focus on the ethics and have built great workflow now that
it's very accidental.
Yeah, well, hey, it's the best accident to have. I started being ethical and have built a career off it, or built a freelance career.
A freelance career.
Yeah. No, well, brilliant. Thank you so much for coming in. It's a truly inspiring journey. I love the fact that it came from that ethical focus, and I think a lot of people have started to think about that now. They've put all the parameters in place, but now it truly is down to everyone to start playing and adopting and doing things differently and seeing what the possibilities are. So, and so for our listeners, if they want to follow Deep Fusion and keep up with your story, where's the best place for them to catch you?
LinkedIn is where I put the stuff that is sort of most valuable or most usable. So LinkedIn, either on the Deep Fusion Films sort of pro page, if you like, or me on LinkedIn. I occasionally put something useful on Instagram, and Facebook's dead, isn't it? I mean, nobody cares.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the best.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Well, hopefully you've all got some fascinating insights from this conversation, and hopefully that sense of purpose and what we can all do with AI to reinvent our own futures with creative and ethical guardrails in place. So thank you. Like, subscribe, and join us for another incredible episode of Generating in the not too distant future.